Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. Donald Trump is afraid after history is made. Largest funeral in world history. Let's get right into the call. Salute.
Donald Trump is panicking this morning as the size of the crowds in Tehran continue to grow. What started with millions is now tens of millions of mourners for Ayatollah Khamenei's funeral procession. We're seeing tens of millions of people on the street in Tehran and in surrounding cities. We'll show you some images right here. So now in the Oval Office, Donald Trump is back to saying, well, we're either going to make a deal with Iran or we're going to finish the job. It won't be tough for us to finish the job. We're going to destroy their energy. We're going to destroy their bridges. We're going to destroy their big, beautiful plants, and they're not going to like it. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, Donald Trump says, as he threatens the individuals who are out there mourning essentially the person who is their pope. And as Donald Trump entered into, or was their pope, Donald Trump entered into the MOU. You did the deal already. What deal are you talking? There's nothing more to negotiate other than to make the deal into a long form agreement. Here's what Donald Trump said. Play this clip.
Maybe making a deal. I don't know. We'll make either. Look, we're going to win one way or the other. We're either going to make a deal or we're going to finish the job. Okay. And it won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people. We can knock down their bridges in 1 hour. We can knock out their energy supply, all of those big plants that they built, big, beautiful, modern plants. They had a lot of money. They don't have any money now. We haven't given them any money. But we can knock out their electricity and power generating plants. And I would say a small part of an afternoon, every plant will be gone. And they know that.
Now, Financial Times has confirmed the numbers that we've been telling you. I've seen some of your comments saying, Ben, there's not tens of millions. You're exaggerating. You're being hyperbolic. Come on, Ben. Here's how Financial Times puts it. The funeral of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, could see a total of 12 million to 15 million visitors across the days of events, making it one of the largest funerals in modern history. I would say it's the largest funeral ever. Take a look right here, what you can see in Engelab Square and Azadi Square. I mean, the whole Tehran is filled with people. And in addition to in the mosque mourning area as well. Here, play this clip. So then Donald Trump is like, well, we're doing very well with Iran. We're doing very well with them. You know, we're just not getting the coverage that we deserve. It's really a media thing that, you know, when I say they're fully destroyed and that the people hate the regime there and that they have no radars and militaries, you know, when media says they have a military, they still control the Strait of Hormuz, you're lying about everything and then show images. Man, that's so unfair to the United States. Here, play this clip.
Hundreds of billions. They have more money than they've ever made. And we're doing very well. We paid for the war many times over. And then Iran, we're doing actually equally as well. We're just not getting the kind of coverage that we should. But we have eviscerated them military. And the bottom line is our country is strong. We have the greatest military anywhere in the world. I was with President Xi.
Then Donald Trump said that nobody ever heard of the Strait of Hormuz before this war. Nobody heard of it, he said, but it's a big money machine. You know, you should learn your history. Everybody knew about the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, I'll give you another piece of history as well. July 3rd of 1988, when the United States military destroyed an Iranian commercial flight, Iran Air Flight 655, killing 290 people. Yeah, the Iranians remember that, and people remember what went down there anyway. Here, let's play this clip of Donald Trump saying nobody's heard of the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait and the famous Strait of Hormuz, nobody ever heard of, but that is some big money machine. I'll tell you what, when you look at the numbers, Michael.
And then Donald Trump, showing again how just utterly delusional and pathetic he is, starts to brag about TikTok. He goes, you hear about TikTok? People say that I get better ratings on TikTok than Taylor Swift. Okay, so he's like, terrified of the size of the crowds in Tehran. He's lying and saying that more people watch him on TikTok than anything. And this is what you're saying from the Oval Office. And by the way, this is supposed to be like a press conference on what he calls the Trump accounts, investment accounts for babies, where it invests in S&P 500 ETFs, these exchange-traded funds. Here, just play this clip of what he says.
About 2 days ago, the new numbers just came out. You know who the number one person in TikTok is by far? Trump, me. I just got I'm number one. Like Taylor Swift was number 11. I'm number one in TikTok by far.
Then Donald Trump's like, every time I see these crypto guys who are getting rich, I say to them, you're so lucky you got me. You're so lucky, because otherwise you'd be under investigation. So you're very lucky you have me. I mean, can the corruption get any more obvious? Let's play it.
They allowed people to come out of jail. And every time I see a crypto guy where they dropped an investigation, I said, you're lucky I'm president, because I don't know if you know, the Biden administration became totally pro-crypto.
Here you have mourners at Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's funeral throwing stones at a billboard of Donald Trump. We can just show you that. Let's play it. And you can see over here, people in Tehran held signs up like this: "We will end you, Donald. Thank you for your attention to this matter." If you look in the crowd, you see lots of signs like this. Sooner or later, your heads will roll. And it's a photo of Donald Trump and people in his regime. Mourners throwing, you saw that. Lots of messages, threatening Donald Trump that's out there. Meanwhile, the world's on fire. I did a video this morning. We know this weekend, Vladimir Putin
Salute, soldier.
The biggest funeral in history, that is now official, the funeral of the Supreme Leader. Have a look at the numbers of people out in the streets of Tehran on the fourth day of the funeral ceremony of the Supreme Leader. The ceremony began with millions of people joining. Millions more now are on the streets of Tehran to pay respect to their Supreme Leader. And I want you to just try and understand the scale. Like, have a look at this. This is 5 kilometers. This is 5 kilometers. Have a look at this. Let me show you some of the other videos and images that came from Iran. Have a look at this. Look at this. Look at the numbers.
ایران در آیین با شکوه و تاریخی تشییع پیکر مطهر رهبر شهیدمون حضرت آیت الله العظما سید علی حسینی خامنه ای و خانواده عزیز و شهیدشون در رسانه‌های عرصه بین الملل بازتاب زیادی داشته. خانم سهرابیان اشاره کردند که مترو تهران از اقصا نقاط مختلف و در خطوط متعدد خودش آمادگی رساندن زائران و مردم رو به مسیر تشییع داره. برنامه‌ریزی بفرمایید که از مسیرهای اعلام شده خودتون رو به کاروان شهدا برسونید. به دلیل حضور گسترده و ازدحام جامعه و خیلی گسترده جمعیتی که در مسیر حضور دارند، خودروی حامل پیکر مطهر امام شهیدمون رهبر شهید انقلاب اسلامی در خیابان آزادی متوقف شده و شما هم در قاب‌های متعدد و از نگاه دوربین‌ها که فقط بخشی از این حضور رو می‌توانند ثبت و ضبط کنند، بیننده تصاویر مسیر تشییع و حضور گسترده مردم هستید. کلمات واقعاً امروز قاصرند از بیان.
There were at least 12 million people here. Reports talk about 20 million people. That's only in one part. And look at the other parts as well. We're not just talking about one location. These are multiple angles, by the way, from Tehran. There were other ceremonies in other parts of Iran as well. There are ceremonies taking place in Iraq now, too, before the burial ceremony. Can you imagine the scope? And guess who attended? The previous president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Israel and the United States said they killed him. Yeah, another lie. Another person that they said they killed but wasn't actually dead. This is a close-up of the funeral ceremony here. Of course, in that strike, Israel killed infants, women, not just the supreme leader. Name me one Western leader that would attract a crowd with, do you know what, 1% of the number. One leader. Would anyone be able to get 1% of these people? Western leaders can't walk in the streets because they fear their own people. They get spat out and kicked out of pubs. Donald Trump can't walk safely in his own country. Benjamin Netanyahu can't walk in occupied Palestine anywhere. No, that's Iran. That is the supreme leader of Iran. That is how much his people love him. And not just his people, people across the world, because they view him as a leader of resistance, a symbol of resistance against the real evil in this world. Look at those streets. Look at the numbers. Unbelievable. And there was also another person who attended, the head of the IRGC, casually on a motorcycle. Yeah, after that, he's going to probably be preparing the missiles of Iran for when Israel and the United States are about to attack. So this was the ceremony that is still ongoing. So in total, you're talking about approximately, if we want to count all of the ceremonies in Iran and outside of, probably 100 million people for one man. I mean, we really need to stop at this fact and think for a second. even if we want to say tens of millions of people in the streets for a funeral for one, or the biggest funeral in history, that really says a lot. This only that tells you the picture that you need to know. You're talking about a leader that was popular and loved among his people and people across the world, because he was facing the root of evil in the form of the United States establishment and the Israeli terror regime. That's the real story. When they terrorize their own people to spread propaganda and force them not to sympathize with the oppressed people in Palestine and Iran. So it's quite symbolic, and it's something to think about.
Over the weekend, Iran had their funeral for the Ayatollah, the late Ayatollah Khamenei, who was killed alongside many members of his family. Trump says he was surprised to see Iranians crying at the funeral, saying that he thought they hated him. And then he went on to say, maybe it's fake tears.
What a joke.
The fact that he actually believed that he thought, well, I thought everybody in Iran hated him, I think just really reiterates the fact that the Israelis are gaslighting the president. The Israelis are feeding him really bad intel, which got us into this war and is going to keep us in this war. And apparently we have a president that keeps gobbling it up. Because really it's the Israelis that are saying, along with the CIA, which the CIA is very much infiltrated with this, people that want the same agenda as the Israelis, if not are the same people as Israelis. They could be Zionists themselves that have infiltrated our CIA, and they're feeding him this really bad intel. Like, who in the world told him, oh, don't worry, go ahead and invade Iran. There's not going to be any consequence to the United States like them shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. That was in every single analysis of, if we waged war with Iran, the very first move Iran would make is cutting off the Strait of Hormuz. Yet somehow that was some sort of a surprise to this administration. Like, Trump just could not figure out that, wow, that actually really happened. I mean, the guy was shocked. You know, and then to find out that killing the Ayatollah Khamenei would not actually topple the government, that would not actually achieve regime change and everything would go as planned. I mean, this is what he was obviously fed that bullshit from the Israelis that, well, all you have to do now is just kill their leader. Once you kill the Ayatollah, then don't worry, the country will fall. That's it. That's regime change. That's all we want from you. That's all we want from you. No. We don't want a forever war. Don't worry, Donald Trump. We're not going to march you into another forever war. We promise you, they hate him. And if they could just get rid of him, then they will overthrow their government. It'll just be a new day for the Iranian people. And he believed that. And now he's believing that, believe they're 2 weeks away from the nuke. They're 2 weeks away from it. I mean, he's been believing every outright lie that many of us have said that's obviously an outright lie. We have been 2 weeks away from Iran getting a nuke for decades now. Yet Donald Trump comes along and he actually believes it. Then the Israelis say, don't worry, just kill Ayatollah Khamenei. And once he's dead, the country will overthrow him because they all hate him. And now he's saying, well, I'm surprised they're actually crying at his funeral. I thought they hated him because he believed that. So what else is this guy going to believe? I mean, this is what's absolutely insane about this. I mean, look at all these people that came out for the Ayatollah. And all it did, there's been a lot of journalists on the ground. Max Blumenthal's on the ground. CNN's even on the ground. And all it's done is it has hardened the resolve of the Iranian people against the United States. The fact that we killed their leaders, we killed their engineers, we killed their schoolgirls. So they actually have hardened their resolve against America. Trump had a phone call with Axios, and in it, he says, that's where he said, I'm surprised that they were crying, said that maybe it was fake tears. He says that the Iranians are begging to make a deal. He says that he's decided to take the week off of talks because of the funeral. So he's kind of doing them a favor, is the way he made it sound. He says they're all there, one shot, and we can take them all out, but we're not going to do that because then we would have nobody to negotiate with, Trump said. Now, I would like to know, Axios doesn't ever really give us like the full stuff. They always kind of give us little tidbits. But why would he say something like that? There were numerous reports that had come out that Israel was actually thinking about taking out the negotiators, because we all know that they don't actually want peace. Israel's not interested in peace. They want to keep lying to the president. They want to keep feeding him a bunch of bull, and they want to continue on with their war. So they were going to actually assassinate the leaders. And once again, Trump sitting there saying, well, they're all there, one shot, we could take them all out, but we're not going to do that. But somebody's planted that idea in his mind. He's actually thought about it, obviously. So he might actually consider taking out the peace negotiators if they don't give him exactly what it is he wants. And I think all these peace negotiators know that their time is limited. I'm sure they say their goodbyes to their family every day and say, this might be it. It's probably it. Going to be taken out because we want peace and the Israelis don't. So they're going to assassinate us because that's what they do, because they want to keep going on with the war. I mean, why do people even listen to the Israelis? I mean, obviously bad wars over and over and over again. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Right? For some reason, we ended up invading Iraq after 9/11, when everybody on the plane was supposedly a Saudi Arabian. They were Saudis. They were, and we have evidence that Israel knew about it at minimum. They knew about it in advance. So they give us bad intel. They give us to lead us into bad wars. And then the other thing I find really, really interesting is this narrative that they're defending us against the Islamists and the Muslim Brotherhood who are coming for us. That if it weren't for them, that all of these Islamists would be flooding into our countries trying to take over. Meanwhile, we're told the Islamists are flooding into our countries trying to take over, right? So we're getting two narratives there. We're stopping them from flooding into your countries and taking over. And then on the other hand, we get they are coming into your country and they're taking over. And then when you look at the Islamists who are flooding into the countries in the West, in Europe, and into the United States, and mostly into Europe, who are they? Well, they're migrants who are fleeing war. What war? Oh, wars that Israel wants. So this big notion that's been going around, I see a lot of these big social media accounts talking about this a lot. And of course, we see this on mainstream news. So we see it on the social media news. We see it in the mainstream news. And it's just this idea that Israel is the gatekeeper, preventing us from being swarmed. But again, it's just another, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. And Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. And just kill Ayatollah Khamenei and the Iranians will revolt. Or just give them some weapons and they're going to revolt against their government. Trust us, trust us, trust us. And the thing that they're telling us is, if it weren't for us, you'd be flooded. Except the very reason we're being flooded is because of their wars. So everything they say is a lie. I mean, people should understand that by now. And this is part of the plan. They want us to be flooded in with these migrants. Believe me, these migrants don't want to leave their countries. They would prefer to be in their homes. That's where they'd prefer to be. But they're forced out because of the endless wars that Israel wages, and the wars that Israel gets us to wage on their behalf. And so they flood into our countries, and then we demonize them, which is what Israel wants, because they want to continue more wars. So they're using this sort of circular argument against us, which is, they're going to flood you, and when they do, they're taking over. And if it weren't for us, we're stopping them. But actually, we're the reasons why they're flooding you, so that we could continue telling you, fear, fear, fear them. So I don't know why anybody is listening to the Israelis anymore at this point. You'd think that Trump, who's, I think, a relatively intelligent guy, you'd think that he'd be like, wow, they have just led us into lies. They've led us using lies into terrible event after terrible event after terrible event. Maybe we shouldn't listen to them anymore. But he continues to listen to them. And the only thing I can think of is that Jared Kushner, who's sleeping with his favorite kid and has had children with her, is, obviously he's indoctrinated Ivanka, and Ivanka's then telling her dad, yeah, you have to do this because these people are evil and we've got to protect Israel, and he'll do anything for Ivanka. I mean, that is the only thing I can think as to the reason why this guy keeps going along with lie after lie after lie that we're obviously being told by the Israelis. And for him to sit there and be like shocked that the funeral for Khamenei was as big as it was, and he just cannot believe it. And he can't believe that people were actually crying for Khamenei. And he says, well, I thought they all hated him. And it just goes to show this guy is being fed bad intel and he's believing it. And at this point, I just don't understand why anybody does.
So, Professor Marandi, where are we going today?
We are going to the funeral, and I think you had some other plans too, but I ruined them for you.
So, what does it mean for you today to go to the funeral of Ali Khamenei?
Well, Ayatollah Khamenei, I knew him personally a bit. He was obviously my father. He were very close friends for a very long time. As I've said many times, I don't get involved in politics up close. I've always steered clear of politics because I thought I would be more effective as a ordinary citizen. So I rarely go places, but I've met him, Ayatollah Khamenei, a number of times, and I've actually had 4 private meetings with him over something that he wanted me to do, and it was during the month of Ramadan a few years ago. He was always a very impressive person, very humble, very polite, very knowledgeable. His command of Persian literature and language is extraordinary. I think everyone would admit that. His Azeri was excellent. His Azeri literature, the most important Azeri literary figure in the last few hundred years was his close friend, Shahryar, the poet. So he was very well informed in Azeri literature. His Arabic, excellent, and very well versed in Arabic literature, Islamic texts, the Quran, the Holy Quran, of course. And I think I've told you this before. He would read in English. He's read novels in English. I will tell you a story that I've never told anyone before. But I've told half the story. I did early on when I was doing interviews. This was after 2009, a few weeks after, I think, the elections in Iran, the presidential elections. And Ahmadinejad won the elections, whatever one thinks of him. And I was saying that in the public sphere and on Western media, RT, Al Jazeera, and so on. And so once Fareed Zakaria invited me, and I was supposed to have a 20-minute debate with him. And they cut it to 8 minutes, and they cut out most of it, which was not good for him. It didn't go well, the debate for him. But in any case, it was like an 8-9 minute debate. And he was very insulting to me and attacked me and made it very personal and called me the mouthpiece of a dying regime and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And Ayatollah Khamenei saw this, or someone showed it to him. And he told me that I met him, and he said that I saw your debate, you did very well. I didn't tell him that they cut the good parts out.
Yeah.
But I thanked him, and he said, I should be careful. He says, I'm a bit surprised because the host, from what I've read of him, he seemed to be more reasonable.
Yeah.
because he would read Newsweek, Time magazine every week back then when there was a magazine, and not the whole thing, but like the key parts. So he was very fluent in English, very, and of course, you know, Max, he's also a military genius, and look at what he did. This whole military strategy that was devised for decades, the underground facilities, the drones. I'm sure you remember how they used to make fun of Iran's missiles.
Yeah.
How they used to make fun of drones. I mean, Iran was the country that really made drones a thing. And the Russians, of course, would tell you this more than anyone else. They were making fun of Iranian drones, and it was with these capabilities that were developed. And in Iran, inside Iran, he was attacked a lot. They were saying, you know, people were saying, now this is not the era of drones and missiles; it's the era of dialogue and that sort of stuff. And politicians would criticize him. People of influence in the media would criticize him. But he continued to move forward, and he developed this. And even though they murdered him, even though he was martyred, and even though many of the senior commanders were martyred, they won the war.
Yeah.
Without him and without his leaders. I mean, that is how effective the Iranian military strategy was, that despite the loss of the leadership, it continued to function.
Yeah.
And we, during this war, not last year's war, the 12-day war aside, during this war, we didn't even have a leader for a week.
Right.
And during that week, the people managed the country effectively, but the armed forces continued to strike back, and effectively Iran won. It wasn't that Iran survived. Iran won the war. Until the last moment, they were hitting back day and night. So he is an extraordinary person. That's why millions of people are going to his funeral, in spite of it being in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And wearing black is not the best thing to do in this weather, but they're wearing, this the color of mourning in Iran.
He was deputy defense minister during the Iran-Iraq war. He was president. I think this background isn't well understood outside Iran, and he helped devise the long-term strategy, including making alliances within the Shia world as a means of deterrence. And then, you know, there was the literary side of Ali Khamenei. Someone who was erudite, learned, is also not well understood. I mean, what was it about him that you think will endure the most? And do you think the war, the success of Iran in deterring this war that was imposed on it, has actually punctured the propaganda about his leadership?
Well, I would say that the alliances that were forged went far beyond the Shia world. I mean, I was in Iraq during the war on ISIS.
Yeah.
And I traveled to those areas that were taken, recaptured. And I was with, for most of my trip, I was with Sunni Hashid groups.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess there's the Palestinian resistance groups as well.
And in Syria too, yes, and the Palestinian resistance. But also Christian, the Hashid.
Right.
Christian Hashid. I spent a dinner with a local commander of a Christian Hashid unit. All of them were part of a broad coalition supported by Iran. Or in Syria, I almost always spent my time with Sunni groups in the country. So there was this broad coalition which was inclusive of anyone that was against the empire, anyone that was against Zionism. And so he created a broad trend, but of course this broad tent would have been much more effective if the U.S. proxies in the region weren't so adamant in creating sectarianism. So the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Bahrainis, all those in the Persian Gulf region, especially with their enormous wealth, they did whatever they could to create sectarian divide, religious divide, racial divide. But ultimately, what he was doing was he was trying to create an environment where the Palestinian people would be liberated. And his belief was to support the oppressed, the disenfranchised. And that was a policy that he pursued in Iran. And we've had different governments in Iran with different ideological persuasions. Some were liberal, some were leftist, some were, but he was always pushing the administrations to do more for the deprived and for the disenfranchised. In neighborhoods that were poor, in cities that were more impoverished, in town, villages. And so you know Iran pretty well, but almost all Iranians are literate. There you'll have electricity everywhere.
Yeah.
You have natural gas everywhere in all cities, in most villages, and running water, even though Iran is a somewhat dry country. So a lot has been done for the disenfranchised, and it's because of him and before him, Imam Khomeini, who was the founder of the revolution, that these policies were pursued. So his support for the oppressed, for the disenfranchised, I think, was key. And Iran's support for the Palestinian people is very deep.
Yeah.
Even though we, the West and the Arabic media and the Persian media in the West tries to itself divide the Iranians from the Arabs and the Shias from the Sunnis, and they're constantly showing footage of how, like, Palestinian Sunnis hate Iran.
Right.
The Persian media in the West speaking into Iran, and they'll find this, like, Palestinian Sunnis to say how evil Iran is and then they would say, look, your government is helping these people and they hate Iran. But despite that, he and his supporters were always steadfast in supporting the Palestinian people. They'd see through the propaganda, they would see through the attempts to create these divisions, and it remains. And in the Arab world, the regimes would always say that the Iranians are not sincere in their support for the Palestinian cause.
Yeah.
Ayatollah Khamenei, I think, is definitely the greatest marcher for the Palestinian cause. What more can you offer?
Yeah. And is that why you believe he was killed?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. But they miscalculated because they believe their own Orientalist tropes. Their stereotypes on Iran, their narrative on Iran that it's a despotic regime, that it's evil, it's unpopular, it's about to implode, it can't govern, it's incapable of governing itself. It's so capable that it defeated the superpower and its broad coalition of countries that were fighting against Iran, and he defeated them in his absence.
And so today what we're going to see is sort of a repudiation of the propaganda of this sort of totalitarian leadership without a popular base.
Absolutely.
Talk about, you've talked about it a lot, that there was the asymmetrical warfare, but another key component in Iran's ability to deter this massive attack was just popular mobilization and Shia ideology. The concept of standing with the oppressed.
Yes, and so many Sunnis also are part of this in Iran. You'll see Sunnis in Kurdish areas or in the south near the Pakistani border.
What is the role of ideology in deterring regime change and keeping Iran from transforming into like a Venezuela situation?
It's everything. It's everything. I mean, the belief in Iran among the majority of Iranians that they must stand up against the oppressor, against the empire, is immense.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful force. And of course, there are Iranians that despise the Islamic Republic of Iran, that hate it. Smaller in number now than before the war, ironically, much smaller. I have students, not personally my own students, but students in my faculty who come up to me after the war began and said that we were in the riots and we were against this, but we want to make up for our mistakes, and what can we do? And some of them were quite emotional, especially during the first 2-3 days. I had three different students approach me separately and ask me what they can do to make up for what they believe were the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
So, but the strong majority of Iranians, they support the Islamic Republic, and many of them, I can't give you numbers, but a large segment of society is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to stand up against the empire.
But we've seen these sort of rallies or gatherings in Engelhab Square and in squares across Iran each night. I mean, these are the deep believers in the Islamic Republic, and they're sort of the embodiment of the concept of red Shiism that Ali Shariati articulated. And they're out there in a way also to prevent regime change, because one of the mechanisms of attempting to destabilize Iran was riots. So they were, talk about the role of their physical presence during the war or surrounding potential targets that were going to be bombed, like infrastructure.
I don't know if it can be called red Shiism.
Or do you think it's just
Shia.
Do you think it's just nationalism that they were?
No, it's Shia. It's the Shia ideology. But nationalism and Islam and Iran are deeply intertwined.
Yeah.
If you ask me if I'm an Iranian or Muslim, for me, Iran and Islam are not two separate things. They're not. As an Iranian, Iranians support the oppressed. As a Muslim, there's no division. For most, if you ask, are you an Iranian or a Muslim, they would say, what's the difference? So there isn't that divide. I mean, there are some who are deeply secular who would say I'm Iranian. But for the rest, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But I think as a Shia Muslim, that is the powerful driving force behind resistance and the support for the oppressed. And the oppressed don't have to be Muslim. They don't have to be. Iran supported Cuba from the beginning of the revolution. During very dark times for Cuba when the Soviet Union collapsed.
Yeah.
And Iran had great financial difficulty. Iran still supported Cuba or Nicaragua.
And Venezuela.
Venezuela was more recent.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about even
during the 80s.
During the 1980s when we were at war and we were in a difficult situation when the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba was really in a bad place. But Iran supported Cuba, or Southern Africa. Ayatollah Khamenei, when he was president, he traveled to the frontline nations in Southern Africa to help them in confronting the apartheid regime.
What you see out here, it's not, to me, just a religious display. It's an anti-imperialist display. It's something any anti-imperialist can see what's happening to Cuba with the starvation siege, or what's happening and them having to privatize parts of the economy, or Venezuela allowing Israelis in to supposedly help with the earthquake, which is basically a white flag of surrender. And here, we can see all around us that is not happening here.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is.
And so where are we? Yeah, go ahead.
We're trying to get close to where the funerals are. You see, like, especially behind you, there are lots of people on the sidewalks, and there are lots of the people wearing black, and we're trying to get there. I don't know if we can.
I think more anti-imperialists, including secular anti-imperialists, are seeing this.
Yeah, I think that what we are seeing in Iran is an anti-imperialist, neo-colonialist, and pro disenfranchised, pro supportive of the press, wherever they may be. This is what it is all about. And I think that this is deeply, embedded in our religious culture. That is why we've been so steadfast in our defense and in our support for all these people. And I think it's a very broad tent, contrary to what they like to say in the West. These Muslims, they celebrate death. It's not celebrating death. They're willing to sacrifice for the sake of justice. They're willing to sacrifice to spare the press. I mean, one of the extraordinary things that Hezbollah did was that they made so many sacrifices to spare the kids of Gaza.
Yeah.
So it was to spare their lives. It was not just a celebration. It was not a celebration of death. It was an attempt to spare the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, in Palestine.
Yeah.
Or, for example, when they in the tent, they would like to say that Muslims are intolerant. In Iraq and Syria, the Iranians were supporting the minorities against ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Sunni, Yazidi. I mean, the West likes to make it seem as if they saved the Yazidis. It was the Iranians who saved the Yazidis. The Kurds, who were in Syria, in the territories that were most devastated by ISIS and Al-Qaeda were Sunni areas.
Yeah.
And the Iranians were dying in those areas against these extremist groups funded by foreign intelligence agencies. But Qatar and the Saudis and Erdogan and others would have people believe that no, these were like popular forces, which was not the case, obviously. But it is so. And again, whether it's Venezuela, a Catholic country, or Cuba, a communist country, or whether it's Southern Africa with its own characteristics, or in Syria or Gaza, in Afghanistan, the same model. The same model always existed.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask, or I've been asking people, and I know there's a sort of a debate about it, is the assassination of Ali Khamenei. He was in his office on February 28th with his family, and it's part of a complex of buildings, right? And so other figures in the leadership were there. I knew the attack was coming in some form, right? I mean, it was obvious.
I knew, yes.
You knew. So why was he there? Do you think that he was accepting martyrdom? And why, were so many others there? Like, what are your thoughts on that day and what happened?
Well, it's a somewhat large complex, and it's the leader's office. So they have different branches. I've been there on different occasions. They have different branches, and so it's a working day, and people do go to work.
Yeah.
But he refused to leave because he said that not many people have nowhere to go, and I'm not going to move. And so he decided to stay. Now, he wasn't for certain that they were going to target him. During the 12-day war, they didn't target him. And it wasn't for certain that they would target him on day one.
Yeah.
But he decided to stay where he was. And as you know, some of his family members live in that complex for security reasons. His niece was murdered. His son-in-law was murdered. His son-in-law was a friend of mine. One of very, very good, man. One of the best people I've ever met in my life. And his daughter was murdered. Not the daughter married to the son-in-law that was murdered, but a different person. So so they targeted. They fired missiles at different buildings, including the homes of his family. But since some of his family members were at work or at school, or, they weren't there, they survived.
And it totally, but it backfired. I mean, you saw people come out into the streets in ways they haven't before.
Absolutely. And even those people who believed the propaganda that he was hiding in some bunker somewhere.
Right.
These people who are naive and listen to Western media and this Persian language media apparatus. There's this huge Persian language media apparatus, which doesn't exist for Russia and China. It's unique for Iran. And day and night they bombard Iranians with propaganda, anti-government propaganda. Some people believe that he was in some bunkers, or he was, his kids were in Moscow, and so when they saw that he was killed on day one, a lot of people approached me and said, how they
were misled.
How they were misled. A lot of people, and so. But I was never even for a moment, and I think you know this, for a moment I never thought Iran was going to be defeated. I knew that we were going to win this war. And I knew that this murder was going to strengthen Iran. And I knew that the murder of the kids in Minab was going to strengthen Iran. And I firmly believe that the murder of the kids in Minab was absolutely intentional. There was no doubt that.
Why? Why would they do that?
Well, first of all, the school was an established school. It wasn't like open 2 days before. It was there for years. And I've been in military operations, as you know. And on day one of any military operation, the first targets are very well vetted for months, weeks, months, sometimes years. They know exactly what they're saying. After a couple of weeks, when things are moving around and people are moving around, maybe they'll make mistakes and they'll think some, let's say, military official is in this building and then they're civilians. That's possible. It happens, I guess. But on day one, no, that's not, never. And many of these kids were the kids of officers. And they wanted to teach the officers a lesson.
Well, it's sort of like, there's no doubt that the attack on the Dina, this unarmed ship coming back from an Indian naval exercise alongside the Americans, which was torpedoed, and then they refused to rescue the sailors.
Again.
Yeah.
And then Trump said something like, it was like they took pleasure in doing this, or to do it again. I don't remember exactly what it was. He said it was something deeply disturbing. But yeah,
he said he was laughing about it or something.
So when they carry out genocide in Gaza, no one should be surprised that they would intentionally kill kids in Minab, and they bombed hospitals, they bombed ambulances on highways.
What about bombing a funeral?
It's possible, but I'll make sure you're okay.
Okay,
It's possible.
You're my bodyguard.
It's possible.
What you have been publicly targeted?
Yes, apparently I'm on some sort of list.
What is it? What is the list?
I don't know.
I received a letter in the mail before I left telling me I'm on a list. That's all it said.
Well, then I should say clear to you.
So I don't know which one of us is putting the other in more danger.
Well, we have a responsibility to do what's right, and
do you think
the rest is in God's hand?
Well, the war was this phase of the war failed, I would say.
No doubt.
It's a war of attrition or a frozen conflict at this point. It could heat up again. But when I see these threats, okay, certainly they have assassinated like high-level leadership, but the fact that so many people are being threatened now suggests desperation among the broader Zionist movement.
I agree. And I think that the world turning against them, Jews turning against them, I think I was more optimistic than you were in some. We spoke about this in Turkey. I think that you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the primaries in New York were a major turning point. And it just shows that how young Jews in the United States, we're all facing propaganda. They face double propaganda. I mean, you would know this, of course, better than me, but they are not only on the receiving end of the propaganda apparatus in the United States, but they're also on the receiving end of Zionist propaganda within the Jewish community.
Yes.
And despite those two layers of propaganda, they've turned against these people. And the broader American society, and across Europe, and across the Western world, across the global South, in India too. I have Indian friends who early on were saying things were not good in India, but gradually a large segment, I'm not saying the majority, but a large segment of the Hindu population, maybe the majority, I don't know, I don't have the numbers. They've turned against the United States, Trump and Netanyahu, and they've shown sympathy for Iran and increasingly the Palestinians. So people are seeing through the propaganda. And I think this is devastating for Zionism.
Yeah, I sometimes think they hate Zohar Mamdani more than they hate Ali or Moshtaba Khamenei.
I don't want to comment on that because then they'll say that the regime is supporting someone.
No,
I only
that's
support,
my comment.
I only support Max Blumenthal. If they want to deal with him, deal with him. Do you want to go and then we can continue?
Are we getting out?
Yeah, they're waiting for us.
I didn't know.
Yeah, they've been waiting for 10 minutes.
Okay, let's go.
So now we're walking to the Mausoleum. I mean, what's happening?
Well, people from way down there and all other side streets there, they go back and forth because they brought Ayatollah Khamenei here at 6 a.m. So some people were here from midnight last night, and they waited for them to bring him here. And then people just come and go all day. And tomorrow morning, they're going to have the prayer. And then the day after tomorrow, there's the funeral procession.
Okay.
So today is people just come and go throughout the day to pay their respects and to pray and to support the revolution and the resistance and the broader Palestinian the axis of resistance, which is out there to support the Palestinian cause.
Yesterday, diplomats were here from Russia to Afghanistan, which is ruled by a Taliban-controlled government. I mean, the Taliban, didn't they attack Iran in 1998? It almost started a border war. There was, many countries coming in, some maybe less unexpected. India sent a delegation. What does that symbolize to the quote-unquote international community?
Well, first of all, the Americans have worked very hard and have put a lot of pressure on countries not to send delegations.
Yeah.
And
I guess Marco Rubio is threatening Gulf leaders.
And across the world, across Africa, across Latin America, to make sure that no one sends delegations.
Yeah.
But many delegations are here, despite the fact that we're not at a time of peace.
Yeah.
Some of these leaders are coming here despite the fact that there is concern for their well-being, and that says a lot. Some did not come because out of, I think, personal fear, and some out of intimidation. But in any case, the Taliban is an interesting case. The Taliban has had support from the West in its creation. We all know that.
Yeah.
And Western intelligence agencies helped create the Taliban. And Al-Qaeda is a Western Saudi creation.
Yeah.
So the Taliban, when it was first created, it was a very extreme group, and it was they massacred lots of people, and they murdered Iranian diplomats, and they attacked the consulate in Mazar Sharif, and they murdered, I think, 11 Iranian diplomats, and I think maybe 10 diplomats and a journalist. I'm not quite sure about the number.
Yeah.
So, but gradually, the Iranians under General Soleimani began to speak with the Taliban. And the Taliban, after the US invasion, began to evolve. After 9/11 and the US invasion of Afghanistan, they did begin to evolve. I mean, the Taliban today is still not anything like what we like them to be. I mean, women cannot go to school or university, they can't work.
Right.
But they don't carry, the people who lead the Taliban today don't carry out the sort of massacres that we saw back then that you were alluding to. This is a new generation of
They're
leaders.
not blowing up Buddhist statues.
Yeah.
They're trying to get out from sanctions.
Exactly. But also, I think there's a change in mentality.
Yeah.
So the Iranians began to have dialogue with them and gradually began to support them against the U.S. occupation. And you know, the interesting thing is that in Syria, these deeply sectarian people on the payroll of the Saudis and the Qataris and Erdogan, they say that Iran supported the Syrian government because it was sectarian, which is not the case at all. It was because this was a dirty war being led by the empire, and Iran was against the empire.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, Iran is attacked by some of the Tajiks and some of the... Is it okay?
Yeah.
It's attacked by some of the Tajiks, some of the Hazaras, some of the Shias, some of the Uzbeks, some of the secular Pashtuns, because they say they're supporting the Taliban.
Yeah.
But that just shows that this is not a sectarian issue for Iran.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, Iran was supporting the Taliban against the U.S. occupation because the U.S. occupation is the greater evil.
Yeah. And Dmitry Medvedev from Russia was here.
I think he's still here.
He's still here.
I think so. I'm not sure, but I think he's still here.
What kind of support do you see Russia providing to Iran during this war? I mean, it's been questioned, but it's also clear that it's a clear statement to have him here.
The Iranians helped and supported the Russians in Ukraine. The Russians helped and supported us in this war. I think the relationship between the two countries is good. And Iran supported the Russians in Ukraine because the United States and NATO were trying to expand into Ukraine and Georgia and then Armenia and Azerbaijan. They brought about a coup in Ukraine. I mean, I don't want to go over this. I know your viewers know this. Yeah, but for Iran, this was a moral issue. They saw what the West is doing as immoral, and the expansion of NATO as a threat to our entire region.
Yeah.
So we supported Russia and Ukraine. They've also supported us in this war.
Yeah.
But we don't scream about our support for Russia. We don't, the Iranians don't scream about it on television and the Russians are not making a big deal about it either in the media.
Yeah.
But the relationship is close. Both know that if the other fails, then the empire will have the upper hand.
It will be situated right in the heart of Eurasia.
Of course.
And Israel will be there.
Of course.
At the same time, Russia has this close relationship with Israel, which I think helped contribute to the demise of Syria under Assad.
Well, I think the Russian relationship with Israel is very complicated, and you know this quite well.
Yeah.
But the issue in Syria was very complicated. The Syrian people were worn out. I mean, they starved.
Yeah. I mean, there was no money left after the Caesar sanctions.
Yeah, they were on their knees, and they were I was actually in Syria shortly before the fall of the Syrian government, because I had gone to Lebanon. As soon as the war started, I went to Lebanon.
Yeah.
And I was there when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was martyred.
Yeah.
And on my way back to Iran, I went to Syria. And I met friends in Syria, and they were telling me that I was asking what do Syrians feel about, how do ordinary Syrians feel about the war between Hezbollah and Israel. And my friends told me something that surprised me. And that was that most Syrians, they're indifferent.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And they said, they're just trying to survive. And they told me in some areas in Syria, they're close to starvation. And I didn't know it was that bad. I mean, I hadn't gone to Syria for 2-3 years, but the last couple of years were really, really bad.
Yeah.
And so the Qataris and they had the money. They bought off people. They bought off. We have to go up this way. They bought off generals, Turkey, Qatar. I mean, they brought these people to their knees. And when Syria fell, many Syrians were hoping that now they just leave them alone and life would get better. But things aren't better. Joe?
We're talking geopolitics now. One thing Russia did not like, but the United States did, was the sort of secret agreement in which Iran supported the Bosnian Muslims in the 1990s.
Yes.
Bill Clinton was basically asking Iran to do that because he was getting so much pressure from the Europeans, and the Republicans were opposed to it in Congress. So Iran played an important role.
Well, he didn't ask the Iranians, but he didn't impede them.
He didn't.
Yeah.
He needed them. I mean, they just kind of were. I mean, that wasn't
yeah.
Iran's reason for doing it. But my point is, Iran has offered a lot to the U.S. in the past, and what they get secondary sanctions from Bill Clinton in 1996.
Oh, it's worse than that. I mean, after the war between Iran and Iraq, and after the United States entered the war on behalf of Saddam Hussein, so the United States, yesterday was the anniversary of the downing of the Iranian airliner, right?
Yeah. Iran 650.
Yeah, 290 people were murdered.
I flew in just on that, pretty much on the anniversary.
Right. So
they were murdered in a U.S. deliberate naval strike. The U.S. lied and covered up about it, just like they're doing with Minab.
Exactly.
And even one of the, I think it was a high-ranking naval officer actually came out with the truth, which was that they deliberately targeted the airliner. 66 children were killed.
That's right.
Almost 300 people were killed. And George H.W. Bush said, I don't care what the truth is. I don't care what the facts are. But even before that, Iran helped get U.S. hostages released from Lebanese militias. And
just to getting back there, yes, the U.S. also helped, because back then, you want to walk in?
Yeah, let's walk and talk.
So, there's no place to go. I mean, do you want to show the crowd maybe?
So there's a big crowd.
I mean, we're pretty far away. We're nowhere near Ayatollah Khamenei. We have a long way to go. I don't know if we can get there. But anyway, so Iran helped release the U.S. hostages. Back then, there was no Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Right.
There were like all these different groups, and Iran went and actually paid some of these groups to go and convince other groups to let the hostages go.
Right. And what did they get in return? The U.S.
More sanctions.
And the U.S. blocked them from participating in the Madrid conference.
Well, the Madrid conference was a complicated story in itself, but Iran had a parallel conference in Tehran, which I actually attended. It was and the leader of Hezbollah was there, Sayyid Abbas Musawi, and Palestinians were there. But the point I want to make is that Iran actually offered the Americans an oil field in the Persian Gulf to Conoco.
Right.
And so after the war, when the U.S. entered the war on behalf of Saddam, and killed Iranians and shot down an airliner, and after Iran had helped the Americans get hostages released in Lebanon, what the United States did was that, and then the Iranians offered an oil field in the Persian Gulf, and what the United States did in return was sanction Iran and impose sanctions on Iranian oil and gas. So whether it was Bosnia or in Afghanistan, because in Afghanistan after 9/11, the Iranians thought that this was this was an attack by Al Qaeda on ordinary American citizens.
Right.
And the Iranians felt that this was it was definitely a crime against humanity. Of course, now the belief is that this was more than Al Qaeda, and that it was that Israeli and American elements were involved. But back then, they thought that this was just like 19 people on the orders of Osama bin Laden who carried this out, and the Iranians felt that the Americans were that ordinary Americans had suffered as a result of this crime against humanity, and that in Afghanistan, the Iranians would cooperate to defeat those who carried out this terrorist attack. I think they were a bit naive back then, because I personally think that 9/11 was, back then I believed this, the official narrative. I did, for many years. And then gradually I began to, and I would ridicule, or at least not ridicule, but I would ignore people who thought otherwise. But in any case, even now, Tucker Carlson in his documentary shows that things were much more complicated. But in any case, for moral reasons, the Iranians supported they opposed the Al Qaeda, and they assisted the United States in Afghanistan because of the crimes against humanity that were carried out.
And Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, President Ali Khamenei, he was a part of these decisions to try to reduce the tension with the U.S. He gave his blessing to the JCPOA.
Well, he was the leader.
As the leader, as the leader, and before that, though, during the 80s. So, and then again and again, assassinated during negotiations. Iran attacked in 2025 during negotiations. The perfidious.
But one thing about him was that he was always skeptical of the United States.
No, he publicly warned against it and said.
But he would give leeway. He would, if the government insisted, the elected government insisted that they give it a try. He would not block it, because he knew that if he blocked these attempts, then later on it would hurt Iran more, because people would say, well, there was an opportunity for peace, but the leadership in Iran didn't allow it. So while he was skeptical, he would give them the opportunity to try to decrease tensions. But he was always right. He would always say that this isn't going to work on every occasion. And on every occasion, it didn't work.
So is there any hope left for any diplomacy with the United States at this point, even if the Democrats come back in? It just seems like they keep driving home the lesson again and again. I think kindness will be seen as a sign of weakness.
That's the problem with the United States. One is the Zionist influence. The second is this belief that somehow any goodwill gesture is a sign of weakness, and which is a miscalculation and a misunderstanding. But I'm not optimistic about the United States. Who knows what the future holds for the United States, and what will happen to the country in the distant future. Maybe you'll have a very different sort of leadership one day in the not so distant future, but I don't see anything on the horizon, anything to be optimistic about.
Do you see war on the horizon?
It's possible, yeah.
What are they waiting for?
The Iranians or the Americans?
The Americans or the Israelis, I would say, would be more keen on this war.
I don't think the Americans are keen on war. If there's another war, they'll lose. I mean, the Iranians right now, they're using this period to rearm, to prepare themselves. They're exporting as much oil as possible. They're preparing their own forces. They're doing what they can to get ready for a potential war. That doesn't mean there will be war, but I think that ruling out war would be foolish, and no one is ruling out war.
So the MOU is what JD Vance says it was.
Well, I think it just shows how sinister the political establishment in the United States is. That they're saying openly that we're just being dishonest. Like it's like what Pompeo said: we lie, we cheat, and we steal. It's all lying and cheating and stealing. But the difference between Iran and other countries is that the Iranians are resilient. The Iranians they know what they're doing. There are divisions in Iran about how to deal with this, but on the whole, the skepticism towards the United States is almost universal. And I think that the Iranians are preparing themselves for war. And that would mean that the United States, if they entered another war with Iran, they would fail. I don't think war is good for Israel, by the way, either, but it's good for Netanyahu.
It's good for Netanyahu.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly not good for Bahrain, Kuwait, the Saudis. Will the Saudis do anything to prevent this?
These are proxy regimes.
MBS has shifted a little bit since the Orb moment.
I agree, but how far can he go? How far is he willing to go? Remember, all of these small Arab family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf and Saudi Arabia, their elites are trained in the United States. Their princes go to the United States to study. They go there for vacation. They have palaces there. They have mansions there. They have apartments there. And many of them are deeply compromised. So I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah.
I mean, what Iran would like to see is a Saudi Arabia and the others to tilt away from the United States and to have a peaceful Persian Gulf. But American influence should never be underestimated.
We're going to the Mausoleum where the coffin of late leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei lies. He was the most high-profile, important figure assassinated on February 28th. But you said you lost friends in that strike. I'm sure you've lost many other friends in the war.
Oh yes. I've
How has the war changed you for these wars and these losses? How have it and also Iran coming out on the other side, the Islamic Republic still intact? How has it changed you personally?
Well, sorry, all the noise. And someone wrote me something to say to you about the Native Americans. Well, you have to turn this off for a minute because they're going to check us.
So I guess my last question, because we've been talking for a long time, is just how the wars and all the losses that you've witnessed, and also Iran coming out on the other side, the Islamic Republic remaining intact, how that's affected you personally, how it's changed your own mindset.
When the war started, I was certain that Iran would win the war, but I didn't think that it would end so decisively.
Yeah.
And I think that I did lose friends in this war. I lost friends in the last war, and I've lost friends in Iraq and in Syria and in Lebanon, and I've lost friends during the Iran-Iraq war. So this has been a long journey with many losses. But I feel that the Iranian people are determined that we have to end ethno-supremacism in Palestine. We have to end this sinister and unjust occupation and subjugation in Palestine, and that the region has to be freed.
Yeah.
I think that the Iranian people have made huge sacrifices for Palestine. And of course, the Palestinians also know that the Lebanese and the Yemenis and all, they've made huge sacrifices. But what sacrifice greater than Ayatollah Khamenei, losing him for the Palestinian cause, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, losing him for the Palestinian cause? They've tried to keep Arabs and Iranians separate. They've tried to keep the Sunnis and Shia separate. They've tried to divide Christians and Muslims. And they've tried to tell Jews that it's either Zionism or you have no option but Zionism, and that everyone hates you. They've done everything they could to create division at so many levels, and they failed. They failed, from the elections in New York to the cheering for Iran during this war in Arab countries across the region. People see right through it. Now, that makes me optimistic. It doesn't make me, I don't think I'm naive. I think that the days and weeks and months and perhaps years ahead will be difficult. But this is the path that we have chosen. It's the path, the only path to choose, a moral path. We have a moral duty to continue the resistance, come what may, and I think ultimately we will achieve the results that we've sought from the very beginning.
Well, I guess as you can see, it's not my opinion, it's just objectively true. Just from the amount of people that are coming out here, these people agree with what you just said. They believe that. That's what they're here to demonstrate.
Yeah, and you know, the people, this is just, this is like 1 hour. I mean, people have been on the streets, many of them for over 4 months.
Yeah.
And they don't get anything for it. They don't receive any funding from the government.
They don't get Costco memberships or
exactly.
And Boost Mobile gift cards.
I recall on many occasions that people would come up to me and say that, look, we've been on the streets for months now, and as we're speaking now, people are trying to speak with me.
Yeah.
People would come up to me and say, look, I have family problems. I can't pay the rent, but I come here every night. I mean, not everyone goes every night. Some people go once a week, maybe once a month, maybe during the first few days they would go, and then they felt they had, so we have to go straight. So sorry, I got.
So yeah, the people are saying they're having family problems.
Yeah, like they have to pay the rent, and they come out on the streets, and then now here everyone is coming from morning to night. You see crowds coming and going. It's because they feel that this is a cause that they have to support, and it's a cause that they believe in.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming, it's tiresome, it's Tehran. These people could, at least during this holiday, they could go to another city, they could go to the forest in the north, or the seaside, and have a vacation with their families. But they've chosen to come here in the heat of Tehran, and this, you know, you saw how difficult it was for us getting here. Yeah. And we had people to guide us through to get here. Other people have to walk for many kilometers.
Well, I can see you have many fans here. Maybe if we just keep talking, they won't bother you as much.
It's okay. No, it's because of you I tell them I can't now.
Well, do we lose our friends or?
I hope not, because I don't know how to get back. No, we're with our friends.
Okay,
At least
well-
some of them.
Well, I've run out of things to say for now because I want to just take in the sights. And are we approaching the Mosallam right now?
We are, yes, one of the gates. So these people are leaving. They were in, they're going out, and then these other people are going back in. This is one of the gates, I think. But yeah, the person who helped us get in is right behind us. Oh, don't worry.
Well, thanks a lot, Professor.
Because if we lose him, I don't know how to get back.
You don't want to use Google Maps?
I don't think around here the internet works anyway.
All right. Well, great.
I don't know. I know how to get out. I don't know how to get to the car.
It'll be like the most original buddy comedy movie ever made, us getting out of here. Professor, thanks a lot.
No. Thanks.
And the mourners of the late Supreme Leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, they're out, and the estimations right now is something like more than 14 million people came out. And the footages, we had some footages, coming out of Iran. And here you see, the Enqilab Square, that and you see the whole, the people. I have never seen, Iran this way. This is a long, look at the crowd. It's just amazing. I have, that's why I think, I don't know what would be the understanding in Washington and this sort of, funeral, and what does it mean for Donald Trump himself and for the policies to come. We have our friends there. Patrick Henningsen is there. Max Blumenthal is there. There are people, and they're sending, some sort of reports from inside. Here is what Patrick reported in Iran. He's in Tehran.
All part of this collective conversation, this collective outpouring of emotion from the country in the Islamic Republic of Iran. We've just left the Grand Masala. We arrived early, around 4:30, 5 a.m. And morning prayer has just kind of concluded. A lot of people leaving, and a whole another crowd of people will be coming in. So they're sort of cycling out, one egress and then in one entrance. And today, this will be a 24-hour affair. And it's supposed to continue then on Monday, a whole new procession through Tehran and then on to the other major cities in Iran. So this has been an absolutely epic state funeral for the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, leader of the country for 37 plus years. So you can imagine this is really the nation in mourning, but also a nation as well in defiance. If you look at the slogans on the banners and the flags in red and black saying, "We will rise," it has a lot of different meanings blended in there, woven in there. But it's a very powerful statement politically and in terms of the global ummah as well, and Iran taking a kind of, a leadership role really with respect to the war that's still underway. Technically, they're still at war with the U.S. And Israel. So you have a lot of different dimensions to this, geopolitically, but also religiously, globally in terms of Islam. And then in the region, this is a major shift in the region. You can feel it. Those slogans of defiance and that we must rise. I think there's also an aspect of a type of call for humanity to rise up against injustice and oppression. And all of that is woven into the message that is very, very prominent here for this incredible historic event. Absolutely extraordinary. Incredible.
Yeah. Here is what Patrick reported. He's in Tehran and watching what's going on there. And Larry, you look at the crowd, look at what's going on. In the big picture, you see those red flags up in the air. And it means that they want justice, the people. When you have that flag in your hand, you want justice, you want revenge, and you want something. And that is important. The assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, it was something new. It has never happened in the Iranian history. Because revolution has happened 46 years ago, and there was nothing. Iranian people didn't experience such a thing, that they would lose or their supreme leader would be assassinated by a foreign country. This is something new for Iranian people. So you see the reaction, you see how the people are coming out despite having those sort of propaganda that this government doesn't have any support. What do you make of, you look at what's going on in Iran and the report of Patrick, what do you make of what's going on?
Well, let me take it from the Western perspective. See, this video proves that the Ayatollah was wildly unpopular because only 14 million people showed up. That means 76 million people stayed away. So clearly he didn't have the majority support of the country. I'm just showing you how ridiculous the commentary from the West can be. What we're seeing, particularly those estimated 14 million people, and I suspect, before all is said and done, the numbers are going to actually rise to around 30 million total that actively participated in the funeral activities. And people say, well, that just shows he wasn't that popular. You say, excuse me, folks, Iran's a big country. Not everybody could travel from all over the country to come to Tehran. But in terms of state funerals for a leader like the Ayatollah, and what do we compare it to? There was a funeral for John F. Kennedy in which several dozens of world leaders showed up to march in a procession. I always remember the image of Charles de Gaulle walking down the Pennsylvania Avenue. You had the funeral of Mahatma Gandhi. That he was buried fairly quickly after his assassination, but still, it was a massive turnout. But according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest funeral procession prior to what we're seeing now was in 1989 for the funeral of the Ayatollah Khomeini. So clearly, this is something that is historic, and we really have nothing else in not even modern history, even ancient history to point to, where you could have this many people assemble to mourn the death of a leader, and with such political importance. So this is, West. This just goes to show you one of the unintended consequences of assassinating somebody. You think, oh boy, that's going to solve a problem, get rid of him, everything's going to be okay. And instead, what you do is you galvanize a country. You bring a country together in a way that it was not together previously.
And I think in many ways it's important because the whole region is coming to some sort of understanding. Today I was talking with Paul Carrick-Roberts, Larry. He was mentioning how a new powerhouse can come into existence in the West Asia because he said just combining Iran, Turkey, and Pakistan, you have something like 435 million people coming together. Just imagine that. Put in Saudi Arabia, if Egypt wants to be part of that security architecture, it's going to be more than 470 million people, 490 million people. This is huge. If there is if the whole West Asia decides to find a path of peace for itself. I don't know if these sort of wars could bring some sort of sanity to the whole region, to find peace through these wars, because the war has been the case for the West Asia for such a long time because of its geopolitical importance. What is your understanding of that? Of the outcome? These wars, the whole region is fed up with these wars. They don't want these wars. They want to put an end to these wars permanently, not temporarily. They're saying, today we're not going to fight. There is a ceasefire going on. There is some sort of pause. We want to do this and that. This is the main argument right now in Iran. If you want to put an end to the war, it must be permanently, not temporarily.
Well, again, it has to be viewed in the context of the, let's call it the geopolitical changes that are now shaking the world. Up to this point, and really it actually started sooner, but up to this point, the United States was perceived as the strongest military power in the world, as the one whose economic clout coupled with its military clout made it invincible. And basically you had to go along, you had to do what the United States said or else. Well, this has exploded that as a myth. The U.S. attack on Iran did not cripple Iran. Yeah, it killed a number of people. What's fascinating now as we look back, the 42 days of war, they killed fewer Iranians compared to the Lebanese that the Israelis have killed. Israelis have killed more Lebanese in that period of time. But nonetheless, it exposed the fact that the United States has limited military capability when it comes to regime change. That previous efforts in the 20th century, well, that didn't go well in Vietnam either. So I put that in there. But what we saw in the 1990-91 with the attack on Iraq, followed by the 2003 invasion of Iraq and the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, that what these did was they didn't reinforce the image of the United States as all powerful. It actually exposed the weakness, and so this is what we're seeing here is the beginning of the decline of America's status in the world as the ultimate hegemon.
Netanyahu was asked on Fox News, how does he feel about what's going on in Iran with the funeral? Here is the answer that he gave us is somehow similar to what you've said. That he said that Iran is a nation of about 90 million, about 80% of them hate this regime, but you still have quite a few million, a minority, that they can bring them to the street. And
I hadn't even heard that, but I told you. Yeah, this is See, this is why you bring me on. I've got that
Yeah.
insight. I know how these people think. What a horse's ass. I mean, he is just a despicable, abominable person. And to say that, hey, go on. I know he should persist with that sort of delusional fantasy, because they're going to continue to try to confront Iran, and Iran's going to kick their ass.
Yeah. In my opinion, Larry, what they fail to understand, I think, to be fair, if you consider Iran as your enemy, at least you have to understand what sort of system this country is. You cannot make things up saying this is a country dependent on one person and we kill that one, supreme leader and the whole country gonna collapse. This was totally delusional on the part of the West, in my opinion. But what is the importance? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just agreeing. Look, this is actually, I'll call it a consequence of Hollywood and television shows, because the way you put a story on, you make a movie, you always got to have a hero, and that everything revolves around that hero, and then you've got the antagonist, the villain, and everything revolves around it. It's a very simplified world. There's no complexity. There's no real nuance, because you can't confuse people with nuance. And so in this case, the narrative becomes that the Ayatollah ruled with an iron fist, that there was no dissent allowed, that the people were subjected to great persecution, and it was only just through some miracle that some have risen up to try to overthrow the oppression, that kind of thing, without, understanding actually the nuance of how people interact, how they live. Like with yourself, you went back to Iran, was it late December, and you were there for 2 months. So you left before the start of the war, did you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I left on February 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah. The war started on February 28th.
So you saw actually how people were thinking and reacting, and what your family had to say, how regular people were reacting, and most of the Western news coverage, they don't capture that at all. They're not even interested in that. They have their own prejudices that they're on display. So you've got to you got to dig beneath the surface and try to say, okay, what's really going on here? And what I've seen in my experience, and it goes back to when I started work at CIA, when I entered my first day on the job as an analyst in the Central America branch, the outsiders perceived that CIA's got all these people with deep expertise and knowledge, they're covering like Central America. They know it inside and out. I was let's see, there were 2 behind me, 1 in front of me, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are a total of 10 analysts in this branch. I was the only one that had actually lived in Central America. I was the only one that spoke Spanish at, they rank as Foreign Service Scale does at 1 through 5. I spoke it at a level 4. And yet, these people are to do analysis on Central America where they don't know the culture, they don't know the people. And when you add into that what like analysis of places like Iran or Iraq, which frankly are more, I'll call them more exotic than Central America, if you do get someone in, you get in like Iranian, someone who was a big supporter of the Shah, their family exiled, they're in the United States, and they got a grudge. They've got a they're working an angle. They are not objective, but they bring that prejudice to the job, and that's the problem, that you're not getting good objective analysis. So here is Iran that's not properly understood by anybody in the Trump administration.
Looking at Iran, Larry, the first supreme leader of Iran, when he came to power, it was right after the revolution. You remember the Iran-Iraq war somehow, happened, and then they were in war for 8 years, 1981 to 1989.
I think it started in 1980, actually, September.
1980 and 1988. Yeah,
it was actually 9 years, because I don't think they settled. They actually got the final settlement until like March of '89. Maybe I may be mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It was 1980 till 1988, and then it lasted. But we had, right after the putting an end to the war, and after that ceasefire between Iran and Iraq being signed, you see the supreme leader of Iran, the first supreme leader of Iran, passing away. And he was charismatic. He was different. He was so, in the eyes of Iranians, in the eyes of the society in Iran, was so important. And many people thought, who's going to replace him?
Yeah.
Are we going to have, is that going to be a huge crisis in Iran? Then you see the second supreme leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, comes, and you see what he has done, Larry. I think that today's Iran is the outcome. He's the architect of the modern Iran today, what we know Iran as today, because he basically reformed everything and created many organizations. And many of these components within the system were created by his policies. He created them. The outcome of the war between Iran and Iraq somehow gave him some sort of wisdom that if he wants to defend Iran, he needs something else to defend Iran, because Iran had the fighter jets from the United States during those days, because the Shah regime was so close to Washington.
Well,
but when,
I mean, let me just interject. And so those were F-4s. And in the first weeks of the Reagan administration, who was it that came before the Reagan administration into President Reagan's office and asked for U.S. permission to sell, to provide tires for those aircraft to Iran? Do you know who that was?
No.
Israel.
No.
So that's why when I hear Bibi Netanyahu get all his panties in a wad over all this, again, the history's a lot more complicated on this front, because here was Israel advocating for, even though the hostages had just been released. And yet here was Israel begging the United States, because Israel at this time was preoccupied with going after Saddam Hussein and his nuclear program. That they wanted permission to make sure that Iran had these tires so that they could fly the aircraft.
Recently, the Iraqi government, they have published a report that shows right after, the occupation of Iraq by the United States, they have basically killed all those scientists, of the nuclear program of Iraq.
Yeah.
I don't know who did that, but it seems that they, little by little, the intelligence or those people who were involved, somehow they managed to kill all of them, most of them. if not all
Well,
of it.
yeah, I mean, it was, this is part of using the IAEA inspection program to get inside the nuclear program in Iran to identify specific individuals. Then that information was passed to the CIA was gathering it because they had someone on the team who was working for them. And then that information was put into the hands of groups like the Mujahideen al-Khalq, MEK, who were quite happy to go out and carry out the assassinations. So, this was again just another example of Iran trying to cooperate with the West, trying to say, hey, we want to be a sort of good citizen of the world, and getting completely screwed over in trying to do that. That they have to become more paranoid. So there are reports out that the Pakistanis disrupted an assassination plot against the Ayatollah Mustafa Khamenei. That may be one reason why he hasn't appeared in public. But Iran, you can make the case that in some aspects Iran's been a little naive in its approach with the West.
The supreme leader, the second supreme leader of Iran, which we've seen the funeral of him today and the day before, he was, Larry, the main reason that you see the Iranian missile program, drone program, is because of him.
Mm-hmm.
He insisted for many, many years that we're going to have a very powerful and mighty defense system. And that's going to be, he knew that, the evaluation on the part of the Iranian military was that, are we going to go after, producing fighter jets? How far can we go? Are we going to get close to the United States or Russia? So their assessment in those days was, no, we're not going to be able to catch up with these superpowers. So what else can we do? Let's do something else. Let's make new missiles. Drones, then came drones. You're going to be amazed that in the initial days of this program, there were people in Iran, those neoliberals or liberals or whatever we can call them, that today they're so weak in Iran that part of the people, or maybe decision maker, they're not part of the Iranian society. They're some part of the elites, I would say, in Iran. They were arguing, why do we need missiles? It's all about human being. We want a peace. It's going to be, everything going to be peaceful. Let's make a better relationship with the United States, and that's going to bring peace to the region. So there is no enmity between us and them. Human right, this and that. And that was the argument underput by the supreme leader of Iran. He insisted, considering all of those arguments, said, no, we're going to make missiles. The missile program. And during the negotiations for the nuclear program, Larry, before that, they were talking about the missile, the ballistic missile program of Iran to be part of the negotiations. And there were people inside Iran saying, no, we can talk about that as well. But the supreme, that's why I'm telling you the importance of his role when it comes to the Iranian military power today. It's all dependent on his decisions, because he decided, we're not going to negotiate about the missile program of Iran. We're not going to negotiate on the drone program of Iran. If they want to talk about the nuclear program, go ahead and talk. That's all. Because we're not going to build nuclear weapons. We're not that. That's why we had that fatwa. This is the importance of the second supreme leader of Iran.
Yeah, well, he also ended up, again, the popular meme or narrative in the West is that women are oppressed in Iran. Women are beaten if they go out in public without wearing a hijab. Homosexuals are or hung from cranes or thrown off buildings. And yet it was really under the Sayyid Ali Khamenei that there was let's call it an easing of the religious strictures that had been put in place initially under the Ayatollah Khomeini. And that, that I think that actually helped sort of blow off some of the tension that had built up within Iranian society. Is that fair or not?
Yeah, that's fair. Larry, I think Iran as a country, we have to understand that there is some part of the society are more conservative, the other part is more open, and you have a combination of all different sort of ideas coming together. It's a country of 92 million people, after all. But what was happening when it comes to the women and, to the hijab and these sort of things, you don't see. I think the government and the government in Iran has learned a lot in the recent decade, because it was always the case to manipulate the Iranian society. It was always about the human right, women right, free speech, all of this and that. And today you go to Iran, you don't see any of those issues because the government, it was a learning process for the government as well, because they learned a lot because if you want to keep your society safe, you have to understand what is the main sources of attacks on your society.
Right.
So they reduced that sort of friction within the society. That was a huge, I would say, you said that I got back after 12 years being outside of Iran. When I got there, I went to the streets to talk with the people to see what's going on there. Not only with my family and my friends, I went to see the society. I wanted to see how the people feel about it. Was all different. It wasn't even close to what I was witnessing before living in Iran. And this is a huge sort of change. It's part of the Iranian identity.
How did it change?
The changes happened because both sides, you see the people who were somehow not happy with some conditions, as you mentioned, with the women or this sort, because we have the religious.
Well, you're not understanding my question. Explain to me specifically, what did you see that had changed? What was
everything has changed?
What and how had it changed? Not the process of what who did what, but what was the transformation that you saw?
Let me put it this way. Economically, let's start with the economy. The Iranian economy was under tremendous sanction and the inflation is so high. But I had a friend here in Brazil. He studied with me for PhD. He studied here in Brazil. He went back to Iran, and I stayed here in Brazil. His life is much, much better than my life here in Brazil. He's much wealthier than me. He's professor there. He's teaching there the same way that I teach here in Brazil, but he's in a much better position economically than me. This is the way that the economy works there. You can get rich easily. And the second part is the society, the way that you see the society. The society, they're more open. You see the women, as they say, the hijab. There is nothing. There is no force on the part of the government to force people to have the proper hijab, as they call it. Nothing of that sort is happening there anymore. The society is more open. You see the way that the people talking about the government inside Iran, you're going to be amazed how they criticizing everything. While they understand, there are two sides, because when Benjamin Netanyahu comes out and said the people hate Iranian government, if you look at the discussions in Iran, you may feel these people hate the government. because they don't understand the culture.
Yeah.
These people are criticizing the system while they're part of the system. They understand that they're part of Iran. They're part of the whole country. They feel about it. That's why they're going. You see this sort of fight. They somehow is perceived from outside that they're somehow hating their country, their government. And nothing of that sort is true, Larry. Because I think what you've raised about the experts on Iranian, for example, in the case of Iran, in the case of Russia or China, you have to have people who understand the culture, who go there, who understand how the people feel, today they said, as I said before, they say Marg bar Araqchi, the death to Araqchi, the foreign minister of Iran, after signing MOU. And for us outside Iran, we may feel that they want to kill Araqchi, the foreign minister of Iran, but that's not the case. The culture is different. The way the people express themselves is different. That's the huge misunderstanding between what we hear here in the West and what they feel inside Iran. This is the problem. This is the huge disconnection between the two sides. I feel my understanding of Iran has improved a lot in each and every aspect, Larry.
Well, that's why that's why I think it's important for you to really boil down into like how it has changed, what you see is different from when you were growing up. So you were born in the early 1980s, and this is really in the early you were a small child during the Iran-Iraq War. So you really I don't think you had any kind of living memory of it. And I'm not even sure that you had any comprehension of how that war affected the country at the time. Now, and so it was those who participated in that war, that affected them. And so we're talking at this time, let's go back 40 years, people who were at age 20 then, they're now 60. So basically the generation that remembers the war are probably from the age of 56 higher. Under 56, they don't have a clue. They didn't, it was, you heard about it just like, here in the United States, we hear about the war in Vietnam or the war in Korea or the war, Second World War. It's something distant. It's not relevant to us. It's like, this is history. But now, in the wake of this attack that murdered the Ayatollah and his wife and his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter, now it's brought it home. And so Iranians, from the age of 15 up now, they have now a tangible experience that is going to stay with them now for until they die. So you figure next 50 years, the people who are 15 years of age and to say 30 years of age, that cadre right there, they're going to become the leadership in another 20 years. And right now, this is a formative experience in their life that, it's because many of them, they're going to live to be 70, 80 years old. So we're talking now, this is a generational shaping event that for the Iranian people is going to, I think, change the course of Iran over the next 50 years.
It feels this way. Really, it feels this way, Larry. I think your assessment is correct. And Larry, in the Strait of Hormuz is still under some sort of fight between the two sides. Today, we've learned that a few hours ago, 12 oil tankers carrying oil from Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, they were allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but they were using Iranian routes.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the vesselfinder.com right now, and it's all going the Iranian route. Yeah, there's a lot of, actually quite a bit of traffic coming out of the Persian Gulf. Let's see, you got the New Star, a crude oil tanker just left. Then you got, who is this? The Dyson, a crude oil tanker. It's headed for Kawasaki, Japan. Let's see, the New Star is headed for South Korea, it looks like. You got the Kashan. It's a container ship. It's headed to China. Picking up a theme here. So that's the New Star. Yeah. So I mean, the results are what the results are. For the United States, again, the critical thing was to try to get the oil flowing back to the United States, and that's not happening. The bulk of these carriers are going to Asia. So, but it is not people are going, oh yeah, the oil's moving. Well, it's 30 to 45 days away from being delivered. Okay, so just because it's now, so we're going to have a period here starting this week. The 11th probably could mark the first day that there's going to be a significant shortage of the high sulfur oil, and it's going to lead to a reduction in the supply of diesel and aviation fuel. It looks like it may be a temporary disruption, but it's going to be a disruption nonetheless, and it'll be significant.
Yeah. Larry, NATO is gonna, we're gonna have the new summit of NATO, and they're gonna gather again, and they're gonna talk about what's going on in Ukraine. It seems that so far Europeans, they are providing Ukraine with something like 90 billion euros, and they already said that 4 billion euros already was sent to Ukraine. And the fight is going on between Russia and Ukraine. There are new footages coming out of Ukraine. Here is one of them. And you see the huge sort of explosion happening, and there's a military industrial complex in Ukraine. And the main targets of these attacks on the part of Russians is basically the production, those factories or manufacturers of UAVs, or those who are producing, different type of drones in Ukraine.
Well, in fact, I saw one of those explosions. There were secondary explosions that went on for more than a minute. So this is, Russia really hit some critical targets last night, and again, we got to when Russia hits these targets, the West pretends, oh, that's nothing, that's irrelevant. When Ukraine hits a refinery and you got billowing black smoke, the West is, oh my God, we're destroying Russia, they're going to collapse. It's just, please, people, just simply look at the disparity in fires. Yeah, is Ukraine capable of inflicting some damage on Russia and Russian infrastructure? Yes, no doubt. Not denying that at all. But the volume of bombs and missiles that are dropped by Russia on Ukraine is multiple factors greater. And it's not just that they've launched a few drones into St. Petersburg, or they've launched some drones in Moscow. It is the Russians are hitting all across the board, and The war really now has entered a new phase, and Russia, because you got to ask yourself, Russia knew these factories were there all along. Why the hell did they wait till now to blow the shit out of them? Good question. I don't have the answer to that, but apparently they've now said, okay, we're taking the gloves off. Not a single factory is going to be allowed to continue to exist, and Russia is going to destroy them methodically.
What would be the outcome of NATO for Ukraine? Do you think that they're going to fund it? They're talking about something like $70 billion NATO going to provide. We had $90 billion euros of Europe, and maybe additional $70 billion on the part of NATO. I don't know what does that mean, because you have to produce arms. These monies doesn't mean anything if you're not able to produce those arms. What does that mean in your opinion?
Well, it just means that the retirement funds of Zelensky and his cronies is going to get bigger. They're going to try to steal that money. It would be one thing if this money would translate into creating trained reserves for the Ukrainian army. So, let's compare and contrast what's going on in the Russian army compared to the Ukrainian army. And this is what I think a lot of people don't understand or appreciate what's happened in the evolution of this war. When Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022, they went in with an estimated 150,000 soldiers, which sounds like a lot, but they were going up against a force at the time that was at least 600,000 Ukrainians. Well, the rule of thumb in the military is an attacking force should have a 4-to-1 advantage. In this case, the attacking force had a 4-to-1 disadvantage. The defending force was 4 times larger. And yet Russia didn't declare an all-out war or mobilization. They called it a special military operation. And it wasn't until August, start of September of 2022 that the Russians realized they had a problem. They had a number of their existing force. They had a number of contract soldiers whose contracts were up, and they were saying, hey, I'm getting out. So Russia then mobilized roughly about 450,000 reservists. There was a first call up of about 140, and then that was followed up by another 350,000. So that's when Russia recognized, okay, the face of this war has changed, and we're going to have to fight in a different way. I would note that in that 2022 period, Russia did manage to capture Mariupol with the Chechen units. The Muslim units were the ones who carried the weight in that fight. And so then what ensued over the next, 2003, 2004, Russia was gradually building up its force and expanding the size of the army to the point it went from basically 900,000 up to 1.5 million, at least. But total number of soldiers fighting in Ukraine increased from 150,000, and then by 2006 up to 700,000. And that 700,000 was the number that General Syrskyi, the Ukrainian, gave, as well as the Russians. But so the Russians have in reserve, at least 800,000 more soldiers they could devote to this cause. And all those soldiers are trained. They're in safe, secure locations. Ukraine doesn't have that. Their estimated what remains of their force is about 600,000. So they are outnumbered by the Russians all along that line. And they don't have a bunch of reserves sitting back that are trained, much less protected. Any large gathering of Ukrainian troops in a concentrated area has been attacked, and they're killed and destroyed. So Ukraine does not have the manpower. So that's what I said. This is a matter of time before Ukraine is defeated and will have to surrender. Just simply, they're going to run out of men.
Yeah. Wall Street Journal, Larry, reported that in late January this year, European leaders held a private emergency meeting in Brussels. And it says that with no aids, phones, cameras present. And they openly discussed their alarm over President Donald Trump's actions, including threats toward Greenland and broader shifts in the United States foreign policy. The meeting, it was focused on a question once considered unthinkable, which is, is Europe going to be dependent on the United States for the coming years, and how dependent they want to be on the United States? And I think, do you think this is the moment for asking themselves this question, or they have to put an end to the war in Ukraine, then asking these questions, because they need the United States, after all, to continue with this sort of animosity toward Russia?
Well, why do they need the United States to continue the animosity towards Russia?
Because without the intelligence, without the weapons coming from the United States, it seems that they're banking on the United States, on the military-industrial complex in the United States.
Yeah, but really, the question that ought to be asked of the Europeans is, what the hell are you thinking? Europe, do you have your own source? Do you produce your own energy? Well, no. We're reliant upon oil and liquid natural gas imports. Exactly. Is your manufacturing sector one of the largest in the world, and you're able to produce whatever you need in order to survive? Well, no. We're dependent in trade relations with countries like China and others. So why have you embarked on this suicide mission where you walk away from Russia? In fact, you seek actively to engage in a war with Russia. And here's Russia that is, militarily, economically superior to you in every regard. That's what I said. Europe has become irrelevant. I know they don't like to think of it that way themselves, but in terms of look at it in terms of history, 120 years ago, Europe was the center, one of the leading centers of scientific developments in the world. It was academically, a place that must go, to be properly educated. Industrially, they were quite powerful, and that's taking into account Germany and England combined. Now, they're it's like the picture of the dragons in the Game of Thrones. Originally the dragons were these big, powerful, and then suddenly by the end, those dragons little tiny creatures look like Mexican Chihuahua dogs. That's what England, Europe has become a Chihuahua.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
All right, my friend.
See you soon.
Always enjoyable. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Coffee. Follow me.